What happens when a cargo e-bike, a fat tire e-bike, and a mountain bike fall in love? Well, that's a little complicated, but if they all had a baby, the Tern Orox S12 might be what it grows up to be. So how does this bike blend the features of those three styles of e-bike? What can you use this one for? And is it worth its premium price tag? Let's take a ride and find out. Hey fellow e-bikers, welcome to Electric Bike Report. My name is John. I had my fingers crossed that I'd get to review the Orox since it was announced, so I'm pretty stoked to get into this one, but bear with me for a few seconds while I run through a couple of items of business. First things first, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our channel so you can see all of our new e-bike reviews. We're known for our standardized testing methods, which we use to gather objective data about each bike. So you're not just getting our opinions about the bikes we talk about, you're getting numbers that you can use in your research so you can be sure you're getting the best bike for your needs and budget. Second, our testing and reviews take a lot of time and effort, so if we're able to help you in your buying decision, please do us a favor in return and help support us by using our affiliate link in the video description if or when you make a purchase. But anyway, let's get into the good stuff and talk about the Orox. Now, there are two models here, the S12 that we have with us and the R14, which is the higher end model. We'll be talking strictly about the base model here, but there aren't too many differences between them. The R14 has a slightly larger battery and a roll-off speed hub that's paired with a Gates belt drive, while the S12 has a standard cassette and chain drive. One of the first things that stood out to us about this bike was its construction. This thing legitimately feels like a tank, and it has a super sturdy frame and a really long cargo rack that can hold a ton of weight. The Orox has two different maximum payload capacities, so it's tested to carry up to 314 pounds or 142 kilograms, including the rider when off-roading, and 380 pounds or 172 kilograms on paved surfaces. That testing was done by a German lab called EFBE Prüftechnik, which evaluates the durability, the load-bearing capability, and the stiffness of performance-oriented bikes. Speaking of performance though, the Orox's off-road capabilities are another highlight. So with plenty of carrying capacity and a couple of different tire options that allow for all season and all terrain riding, this bike is extremely well suited for bike packing adventures and hunting trips. With the right accessories, and we'll get more into those later on, it can just as easily handle family trips to the park or a run to the corner store to pick up some groceries. Finally, another massive component of the ride here is the Orox's 250 watt Bosch Performance Line CX mid-drive motor, which shows up on all kinds of e-bikes, including many electric mountain bikes. This motor has a torque sensor, so it detects how you're pedaling, and depending on your pedal assist setting, it can return up to 340% of the effort you apply. This makes the Orox feel extremely powerful, but also really natural, so it feels a lot like riding a regular bike. To run through the rest of the S12 spec sheet, the bike is powered by a 36 volt, 725 watt hour battery, but it can be equipped with a second battery that tucks into the insulated frame pack between the top tube and the down tube. I guess that leaves the first battery out in the cold, but it's still pretty cool to see that insulated pack comes with the bike. The Orox also includes a 1x12 Shimano Deore XT drivetrain with a 32 tooth chainring and a huge gear range of 10 to 51 tooth cogs on the cassette, so it can tackle hills and flats with extra weight. It's equipped with Magura MT5 hydraulic disc brakes, which pair 4 piston calipers with 203mm rotors. The bike's 27.5-inch Atlas X wheels are custom with dual-walled rims and boost through axles, and the bike can be decked out with either 4-inch wide Schwalbe Johnny Watts fat tires with puncture protection and a hybrid tread pattern, or 4-inch V snowball tires with stud compatibility and knobby tread for off-road and winter riding. The Orox includes a hinged center stand to keep the bike stable when loading up. It also has aluminum fenders on both wheels, a super bright 700 lumen headlight, an LED taillight that also serves as a brake light, and a rear cargo rack that's rated to hold up to 220 pounds or 100 kilograms. The bike's saddle is the Ergon SM model, and then to finish things up in the cockpit, the Orox has a massive set of 810mm handlebars with a slight rise. A rapid fire shifter sits on the right handlebar, and a Bosch Kiox 300 remote is mounted to the left handlebar, which interacts with the central color display. And then we'll get deeper into this later on, but the drive system pairs with the Bosch Flow app for navigation, security, customization of the pedal assist system, and a whole bunch of ride data. To wrap things up, the Orox S12 is a Class 1 e-bike with pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour. It's available in 2 frame sizes, fitting riders from 5'1" up to 6'5". Our test bike weighed 83 pounds. The bike is UL 2849 and UL 2271 certified, and it's available in 2 color options, including Satin Highland Yellow and this one, which is called Satin Pine. It's compatible with a massive range of accessories like the trail rack that we have on the front of ours. It can be equipped with storage baskets and bags for cargo, seats, handrails, seat belts, and even weatherproof canopies for passengers. Plus the frame includes an integrated tow bar so you can hook up a trailer, and as you saw in the intro, it can stand vertically for storage. But that should cover everything, so let's get into the data and see how the Orox S12 performed when we put it through its paces. Starting off with our brake test, we measured the Orox's average stopping distance on pavement by pedaling up to 20 miles per hour and applying the brakes at a set line. Then we measured how far it traveled as it came to a stop and repeated the process 3 times to account for any inconsistencies. The bike's final result was 18 feet and 3 inches, which is seriously impressive, but also not that surprising. For comparison, I looked at the data for all the cargo and fat tire e-bikes we tested, since this is a hybrid between the two, and the average for those categories was 21 feet 11 inches, so the Orox did way better than average by over 3.5 feet. The Magura MT5 brake system is one of many of the bike's performance-oriented components that would be right at home on an eMTB. The system's 4 piston calipers apply a large amount of surface area to the rotors, and with those being 203 millimeters in diameter, they're able to dissipate heat really quickly and maintain their effectiveness. Every time I hit the brakes when I was testing the Orox, it stopped faster than I expected, and it felt super controlled and stable. The rear wheels would skid if I really laid into the brakes, but the bike didn't really fishtail or deviate from its line of travel at all. Our conclusion from this test is that the Orox is spec'd extremely well with a powerful set of brakes, and we wouldn't change a thing about them. Next is our speed test, where I tested the speeds and power levels of each of the bike's 4 standard pedal assist settings. Let's go out to the bike paths and see how the Orox did. All right, we are out here for a speed test on the Tern Orox S12. We are starting off with no pedal assist. Looks like we're going a little over 12 miles per hour, but holding pretty steady there. Maybe up toward 12.5, but let's go ahead and go up to eco mode. All right, so I can hear that motor, a little bit of a whine, feel a little bit of power. Go ahead and shift up a gear. And yeah, definitely making a little bit of a difference here. So we got maybe 1.5 miles of difference. Up toward 14 miles per hour. All right, also holding pretty steady. Let's go ahead and go up to tour mode. Already feels more powerful, very smooth. Almost don't notice that the motor's there, except that I'm going faster, and there's a slight noise. All right, looks like we're gonna kind of top off around 17 miles per hour here in tour mode. Let's go up to sport mode. So just a caveat that these are the 4 standard pedal assist settings. You can swap those out for different options that sort of automatically adjust, and we'll talk more about that later. But for now, we'll just look at the standard ones. So we're going about 18 miles per hour in sport mode. maybe up toward 18 and a half. All right, yep, and then we'll finish things off in turbo. And I already feel that, you know, this is the most powerful of the four. Definitely cranking out a lot of power, pushing me along as I pedal. And yeah, looks like maybe around 19 and a half. Now let's see what happens when I give it a little bit of gas. We do get a little bit more, but it looks like we're topping off kind of around 19.6, 19.7. So, all right, we will call that our speed test. So to run through those numbers again, I started off with no pedal assist at about 12.2 miles per hour, and then pedaled up to 13.9 in eco mode, 16.9 in tour mode, 18.3 in sport, and 19.2 miles per hour in turbo, with a maximum speed of about 19.7 miles per hour with some extra effort. Those were the standard pedal assist settings, but the bike's Bosch drive system has a variety of different pedal assist settings that you can sync with the bike and customize. I'm gonna dive into all of those details in a separate section later, but for now just know that the results of this test might have differed if we had set the bike up with different assist settings. So if we look at our test data in a graph, this shows us the Orox's speed profile and its power distribution. Ideally, we like to see an angled line showing incremental jumps in speed. This usually gives every pedal assist setting a different feel, and for the most part, that is what we see. The higher assist levels seem to make a bit less of a difference than the lower ones did, but overall, they still felt pretty distinct. I felt like the Orox could have handled faster class 3 speeds up to 28 miles per hour extremely well, and the bike's speed profile seems to back that up, as the class 2 limit looks like it was holding the bike back a little. But I also have to say that I appreciate the slower 20 mile per hour limit for safety when carrying cargo or passengers. The bottom line is that this bike did provide the meaningful differences in power and speed that we expected, so it gets a solid 2 thumbs up. Our range test is actually 2 separate tests. So in the first one, we hit the bike paths and pedaled the Orox in turbo mode until its battery ran out of juice, and that gave us a minimum range. But then we recharged and did the same thing using eco mode to get its maximum range. With a single 725 watt-hour battery, the Orox gave us 36.2 and 78.9 miles. Again, for comparison, I got an average of our data for other cargo and fat tire e-bikes and found that the Orox's range was above average for those categories. Its turbo mode test was about 4 miles above average, so probably within the margin of error, but its eco mode test was nearly 20 miles above average, and that's pretty remarkable. To be fair, most of those other bikes used rear hub motors, which are naturally less efficient than mid-drives, so the Orox just had a little bit of an edge. But its range test results were right on the money when I looked at the average for all the bikes we've tested with 250 watt mid-drives, and I think that's still pretty impressive for how big and heavy this bike is. Now, Tern has a couple of different advertised range estimates for the bike. In one place they say up to 100 miles, and in another they say 52 to 91 miles, so in either case those figures seem a bit hopeful. And it's important to keep in mind that riding off-road, riding with cargo or passengers, or both of those things combined will likely result in lower results. But the bottom line is that I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a similar bike with this much adventuring potential and a high weight capacity that would do better. And don't forget that the Orox can also be outfitted with an extra battery if you're planning a multi-day overlanding trip or something similar. Next is our hill climb test, which we perform at an infamous hill here in southwestern Utah called Hellhole Trail. It's a paved path with an average grade of 12%, which our tester Justin pedaled up using turbo mode. Let's go see how the bike did, and we'll go over the results back here in the studio.
All right, we are out here on the Tern Orox, the pedal test up the hill. There's no throttle, so this will be the only one. Really curious to see how this does. Super cool system where it's even telling me when to shift down to have the right cadence. So you're gonna get to see if I'm doing this properly, I guess, according to the Bosch system. It's actually matching up with when I'm wanting to shift down. It's a heavier bike. It's gonna go anywhere, do anywhere. So we'll see how the motor does, right? To that section, right down to about 9. 9.2. And I will say, if I just kind of keep the right cadence, I'm not having to push too hard here. Let you listen to the motor through this section. So yes, you can hear it. It's definitely kind of in the background. Slightly maybe on like a higher pitch, but lower noise output. Just overall though, the motor feels really good. I definitely could have just kind of downshifted, kept a highish cadence, and kind of cruised up here. At a slightly slower speed. Did not have to push very hard. I'm really curious to see what this result came out to.
Clearly, Justin didn't have any trouble finishing the test. He reached the top of the hill in 1 minute and 37 seconds with an average speed of 11.2 miles per hour. Now, once again, I'll break things down a couple of different ways for comparison. First, when looking at the average for other fat tire and cargo e-bikes, which is currently 1 minute and 13 seconds, the Orox looks a little on the slower side. But again, most of those bikes had hub motors, which are usually faster in this test than mid-drives because they kind of add to the rider's effort instead of amplifying it. If we look at the average for bikes with 250 watt mid-drives, which is currently 1 minute and 36 seconds, the Orox is right in line with the average, which is really impressive considering its size and weight. That largely comes down to the motor's output. The Bosch Performance Line CX motor can crank out a maximum of 600 watts and 85 Newton meters of torque, which are both on the higher end when looking at similar motors. Do keep in mind that you might need to work a bit harder when going uphill if you've got the Orox loaded down with weight, but you can definitely rest assured that this motor is powerful enough to make the job significantly easier than it would be otherwise. Finally, we'll wrap things up by looking at the Orox's ride quality. I took the bike out on some rough and rocky desert roads to help you get a feel for things, so let's go out and talk about the basics, and then I'll finish off this section with more details back here in the studio. All right, let's talk about ride quality here on the Tern Orox. So this is definitely an interesting bike. It's kind of a fusion between a cargo bike, a fat tire bike, and an EMTB. And the riding position definitely feels a little bit more like a mountain bike. You have definitely a forward lean, so I'm putting some weight on the handlebars here. These huge, wide, I believe they're 810 millimeters if I remember correctly. But you know, it feels really good, really stable, and I feel very much in control of the bike, especially considering its size. So let's see. There are two frame sizes that fit riders from 5'1" up to 6'5", and we are on the medium size. There's also the large. I'm 5'11", and it feels super comfortable. I think maybe the reach is a little short for me, so I'd probably prefer the large size frame, but overall this bike feels great, handles very well, and is extremely comfortable. Let's see, there's quite a bit of adjustment in your saddle height. You get about 10.5 inches with a long seat post, and then your handlebar height and your reach are set, so you have a standard threadless stem up front. Let's see, we have a couple different tire options. So right now we are riding on the 27.5 inch by 4 inch V snowball tires, which can be set up to be like a winter tire with studs, and then you also have the option when you buy the bike to get the Schwalbe Johnny Watts 27.5 inch by 4 inch tires as well, which have more of like a hybrid tread pattern for both off-road and paved surfaces. But those tires feel great. They add a lot of cushion to the ride. They do a lot of heavy lifting in making things feel comfortable, but also add a lot of traction and grip and stability. They give you that all-season riding ability. And then, yeah, so no suspension on the bike, but the benefit of that is really crisp handling. And, you know, again, with those fat tires, those kind of substitute what you would get from the squish of a suspension fork there. So moving on to the motor, this is the 250 watt Bosch Performance Line CX mid-drive with 85 newton meters of torque, which is definitely plenty powerful for being out here where I am. That has a torque sensor, so of course, as we've talked about, it feels super natural, almost like you're riding a regular bike, just faster and easier. And again, you know, this is nothing for this motor. But I also want to talk about the display a little bit and the user interface here. So we'll talk more in depth about the Bosch Flow app separately. I have that pulled up on my phone right now. You can see that the display is basically set up to, my phone, the app is set up to mimic the display. And we'll go ahead and sort of flip through the different pages of the interface because there's a lot of really useful information here. So you can see sort of the main screen has your current pedal assist setting, your charge level, your speed, and an indicator for whether the lights are on or not. And I do want to point out here that right now we're riding in the EMTB mode, which is one of a few pedal assist setting options that can kind of automatically adjust their power output based on where you're riding and how you're pedaling. So there's, I believe, 3 or 4 of those, as well as the standard options that do not automatically adjust. But let's go ahead and scroll through these screens. So first up, we have basically your trip distance for your current ride, as well as the time that you've been out, and then the total distance over the lifetime of the bike. The next screen is, I think, one of the most useful. So shows you your current battery charge for both the bike and your phone, as well as an estimated range for each of the 4 currently synced pedal assist settings. So right now in the EMTB mode, we have a maximum of 21 miles left based on the 79% battery charge. The next page is a power meter for the motor. Shows you also your cadence when you're pedaling. So you can see going downhill here, not using a lot of power. Let's go ahead and go over. By the way, that rattling that you hear is the center stand under the bike. Haven't had any problems with it. You know, definitely a little noisy, but otherwise not a big issue. So here we have average speed over our ride, and then maximum speed over the lifetime of the bike. We have our current elevation, the highest elevation we've been on the bike, and then the feet that we've climbed on this ride. And then we have a page that will sync with the app if you use it for navigation. So this will show you your route just as your screen does, your phone screen. And then we also have a page showing that we are connected to my phone here. But that is really about all for the user interface. Again, this bike feels awesome, very comfortable, handles very well, feels, you know, perfectly powered for this kind of riding. And man, yeah, definitely could see it out here on a bike packing trip or just coming out to explore. All right, so I wanted to kind of walk you guys through the Bosch Flow app and how it connects to the Orox here. So this is the sort of main page that shows we are connected to the bike, shows our current battery charge and an estimated range based on our pedal assist setting. So if I change that using the bike, it will show you, you know, what modes I have and what the estimated range is in each. It will also show you kind of how many miles you've spent in each of the currently loaded assist settings that you have. And what I mean by that, let's go into this customize the riding mode section. So the bike can hold 4 pedal assist settings, but there are more that you can choose from. So this shows that I currently have turbo, EMTB, auto, and Tour Plus modes loaded to the bike, but if I go to this edit list, it pulls up the full list of options that we have. So there are 7 in total, and you can, you know, turn on and off the ones that you like. You know, Eco, Tour, Sport, and Turbo are, you know, pretty standard, but then you have some other settings like Auto, EMTB, and Tour Plus that, you know, sort of adapt a little bit based on what you're doing and what your environment is. So if you save that, then it will load those onto the bike, and we can see, let me go back to the main page on the display there, that now when I switch pedal assist settings, those are loaded. But then in the app, when you have the ones selected that you want to go with, you can go into those settings and really customize the feel and the output within each of those. So this assistance is just kind of the overall power level. You can raise or lower that. Kind of the same thing with the acceleration. You can change how that works. You can also change the maximum speed of each setting, with 20 miles per hour being the absolute and 6 being the lowest. And then you can also adjust the torque in each setting. So if I were to say that, you know, I want to go down to 18 miles per hour, but have a little bit faster acceleration, then I can go back and it will show me that I have customized turbo mode there. But if we close out of there, let's go over to the ride panel. So this is your navigation. I will go ahead and pull up the route back to work. I just tested out one of these things. So enter your route. You can save it for use later, but it'll show you a few options for the roads or routes that you want to travel. You have a leisure option that, well, I think all of these are going to be the same now, but depending on where you start, you have, yes, the leisure option, the daily option, and the EMTB route option. And, you know, depending on where you live and what paths are around you, a leisure option might be kind of the long way. Daily might be the direct route on like a main highway. And then the EMTB route seems to pick up, you know, trails and bike paths, depending on, again, what is around you. You also have a few different options for what the map can look like. But, I mean, let's go ahead and just go with the leisure route. So this is where things get pretty interesting. You have, you know, the destination. It will show you what the estimated charge level is based on your current pedal assist setting. You can see that that's changing. If I go to turbo mode, then it's saying that by the time I get back to work, I should have 77%. But with the latest update to this app, you can turn on this range control thing. So it starts you kind of at that same estimate, but if you go into the slider, you can change and say, no, you know, I want 82% of my battery charge by the time I get there, and it's going to automatically adjust the motor output to make that happen. And that was something that I just tested on a route out from work, so now I'm heading back. It worked just fine coming out here. I actually ended up with a little bit more charge than what I had. Or than what the app said I should have, but seems functional, and it's a pretty cool thing that you're not going to get many other places. But if we hit go, there's something to agree to, but then it loads the route into the bike's display, and then kind of shows you the same thing here. Now you can also, from this page, enter the ride screen, which basically kind of turns your phone into the same or a larger version of the bike's normal display, with a little bit richer feel here. So you see that we have the map, we also have the elevation on the route, and this will track the power that the bike motor is outputting, as well as my cadence, and then altitude and feet climbed. But you can also rotate that into portrait mode if you want. So very cool if you're, you know, not able to read this small display as well. This gives you the option to have something a little bit larger and easier to read. We also have a statistics panel back in the app that shows all of the rides that you've taken, and it will track your rides automatically. So as soon as you start pedaling on the bike, it will read your location, and it will come up with ride summaries here. Now if we go into the final panel, which is the settings menu, Then we have a few different things here. You can connect to the Flow Plus for, I believe it's $35 a year. That gives you basically GPS tracking for security. Let's see, you can connect Strava, Komoot, Apple Health, and Apple Watch. You can also save routes from those other apps and load them into the ride panel. If you go into My Routes, and you can import GPX files there, so that's pretty cool. Back to the settings menu though. Let's see. Seems like I already set up the security features, but there are some other things you can change with basically when you turn the bike on, it will be locked. You won't be able to adjust the pedal assist setting or use the motor unless you have the app open and then you approach the bike. But that about covers everything, so I guess we'll wrap it up there and finish up with the review. But I'm really impressed with the Bosch Flow app. It's got some amazing functionality, and I think it's a huge addition to the Orox that's really gonna make a big difference. So, all right, yeah, let's bounce back to the studio. So, of course, the bike's display is a huge part of the ride, and that, of course, ties into the Bosch Flow app. I mentioned the automatic assist settings, and I want to be sure to explain those a little bit more. In addition to the standard Eco, Tour, Sport, and Turbo modes, there's also Tour Plus, which is designed to be economical, but also to help out a bit more on hills. There's Auto, which is designed to counteract headwinds and help out on hills, but isn't as concerned with saving energy. And then there's an EMTB setting, which is a higher power mode that adjusts the level of output from Tour to Turbo as needed when you're climbing or going over varied terrain. But to touch back on sizing and fit, the medium frame size fits riders from 5'1" to 6'1", and the large goes from 5'5" to 6'5". I'm honestly surprised at how comfortable I was on this bike. I'm kind of hit or miss on e-bikes with a forward-leaning riding position, but this one felt great. There are a couple of downsides to the bike's size that I want to be sure to point out. It's not as agile as something with a shorter wheelbase, but also it can be a little hard to move around when you're not riding it. And it may be difficult to find a bike rack that will fit the Orox. We really like the fact that it could stand up on its tail end and take up less storage space, but there's no getting around that this thing is huge, so just keep that in mind. That said, I thought the Orox had a great ride feel and really good handling. I could definitely feel how big it was, but with those 4-inch wide tires and the huge handlebars, it felt really manageable. Overall, I'd say the ride quality was excellent. The functionality of this bike is really something special. The natural feel of the motor, the customization options through the app, and all of the optional accessories combined really well to make an awesome user experience. All right, so my main takeaway from the Tern Orox S12 is that it's a niche bike that's probably not for everyone, but I think the people who it is for are really gonna love this thing. I see a few different types of riders being drawn to the Orox. So first is the dedicated bikepacking, overlanding, and adventuring crowd. This bike can be packed to the brim with supplies and equipment. It can carry 2 batteries, and its ability to tackle just about any kind of terrain, any time of year, makes it a real workhorse. Second, I think it would be a good fit for anyone who really wants something big and stable and utilitarian. This bike feels rock solid, even under load. Its speeds are nice and controlled. It stays firmly stuck to the ground, and it can be decked out with all kinds of useful accessories. And finally, this is undoubtedly one of the most versatile e-bikes we've tested, but it's also on the pricey side. So I see it being a great fit for anyone looking for a premium e-bike with a very natural ride feel that can do a little bit of everything from family rides to weekend exploring and adventuring. Looking back at the bike's test results, it did a fantastic job with average to above average performance across the board. Factoring in all the accessory options and everything that you can do in the Bosch Flow app, and this is also one of the most functional and customizable e-bikes that we've seen. If you'd like to take a closer look at the Orox S12 or the higher end model, the R14, you can use our affiliate link in the video description. Again, if you found this review helpful, please make sure to use that link if you make a purchase. And if reading is more your thing, you can check out our written review with the other link to our website, electricbikereport.com, where you'll find tons of reviews, news, and educational content. But that's all for today, and thanks again for watching. I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this was the Tern Orox S12.